Thursday, September 13th. This is advanced class. We're going to do advanced stuff. And so if you're regular class, don't watch this video. One, it'll confuse you. Two, the story we're going to get to is going to make your hair bleed. So you're not ready for it. If you are advanced, then yeah, we'll help you out. Let's see, the book report book tomorrow. Bring that. We have the 2 entries onto there. Our dead kid from before is now back alive, so such happiness. We had dosed dead kiddos. Then, let's see. Not the bell word. Homework. We're going to take a look at the homework real quick. Because much like with everything in my class, homework is a little different than everybody else's. So I'm going to have you download a copy of it. So here's where iPad comes in. Go openy, tappy, scrolly, and you're going to go to the short story page, and then scroll down to where it says story homework number 1, and then go tappy, and it's going to bring up a file. And I'm going to walk you through that file. You're probably going to have questions. The drawback is, I'm probably not going to answer them. I'm going to make you wait till tomorrow. And then tomorrow we can answer those questions, because if I can have a chance to look at it and freak out, we'll go from there. You'll know you're on the correct page, because it'll have a thing we're going to look at here in just a moment, which is where, of course, having your iPad open was the first step. That way you can go and download it. Mr. Brovicast, that laser thing is so helpful. I know, it's like it helps you focus like a kid. All right, so we're going to roll down. You'll know you're on the right page, because it says, make sure it says advanced at the top. It should have a little advanced-y thing. If not, then you're looking at the wrong one, because don't go to the regular class. All right, for my homework. Yours doesn't have the arrows on it, so you have to use your imagination. But there's 3 options for my homework. Pretty much all my homework that I'm going to do that goes into the notebook, I give you options for it. Option, by definition, means choice. You get to choose which one you want to do. So you can choose option 1, option 2, or option 3. Option 1 is your straight out, you're just answering questions option, which many of you will end up choosing because it doesn't require creativity or a whole lot of thinking. You're just going to go through there and analyze. So option 1, you have 12 questions. You only have to answer 10 of those 12 questions. You get to toss out 2 of them. Because way back in dinosaur times, when I was a kid, I always wanted to skip questions. And now I get to be a real adulty person, and I create my own questions, and so I create 2 that you get to throw out. Which 2 are you going to throw out? I have no idea. Different kids hate different questions. And so you get to pick the 2 that you throw out. If you don't throw out 2, and you answer all 12, it gets you an extra B point. And so doing, just like, you wouldn't even have to ask that question, of course, because it's in the directions. The thing that you guys have read because you're responsible, without me having to harass you. Gosh, are you confused? Yeah. Gosh is the next step.
Yes.
Right?
That's
Gosh.
so good.
I feel the same way. Did you figure out what the issue was?
No, it's not like on here.
Time out. Oh, God, what's your issue? Your problem is you have to go tappy, tappy, and then you have to hit the little down arrow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Time back in. All right, so here, so you have the 12 questions up there. Mr. Brovicast, I was absent for after 20 years. I've not read that story. No, you weren't absent. It's on your desk. You just came and picked it up. So that's why you've not read that story yet. That's the one you're going to have to read all on your own with your own brain. Coons, we're recording this for you because we're kicking you out. So you get to sort of tag in here from the rest on the way out. So good luck to you.
Okay, bye.
Those of you with questions, of course, I'm not calling on you for a while. We just practiced me not calling on you. So here, you're going to have to read after 20 years all on your own. Much like I've learned from math, math doesn't give you homework problems and then give you the exact same problems on a test. They teach you how to do a thing and then give you a thing you've never seen before. I'm going to do that. I'm going to teach you how to figure out character, setting, plot, point of view, and all that. And then I give you a new story. You read with your own brain, and then you have to figure it out from there. So 7 of the questions come from the story you read. 2 of them come from Black Cat. 3 of them are going to come from that non-fiction thing that we did before. If you don't want to do that one, you can just put a big old fat X on it and jump to option 2. Option 2! On this one, it's all about creativity. For this one, it's what's the acrostic poems. Have you seen those things? We have like the little letters. I stole that idea and turned it into a homework. My goal is for you to be able to go through and prove to me that you've read these stories. So you're going to use this phrase 20 cats. And you have to do those letters going down. T, W, E, N, T. And then for each letter, you're going to come up with a phrase describing the stories. So you're going to go like, the man hates cats and killed one and stabbed its eye. So you're going to come up with a phrase that describes that story as you go through for each one. Each one has to be at least 6 words, no more than 10 words. You're going to be covering those 3 stories as you go through. The drawback to this one, and most kids who choose this one end up getting a 0 on it because they can't follow directions. Yeah, I'm still ignoring you. You're just adorable. But you have to be able to follow the directions on there. But directions are challenging for some people. So if you can follow directions and be creative, you can choose option 2. And then option 3. On option 3, this one is only available if you get a 23 or higher on the quiz on Monday. So your quiz is Monday. And on that one, if you can get a 23 out of 24, years ago, kids came up with the idea like, Mr. Brovicast, I wish we could not have homework. I'm like, well, I have to prove that you're smart. Like, well, if I get a good grade on the quiz, that proves I'm smart. And I go, that's a good point. So what I did was, option 3 is, you prove to me that you get a good grade on the quiz, you just tape your quiz into that spot, and that becomes your homework. That's your proof to me that you are smart. Beginning of the year, on the list for my class of things you had to have, one of those items was tape. And if you asked me, I said, you're going to need that tape in the future to get you out of the homework. Today is the future. So now is when it gets you out of the homework. But once again, there's directions. Most kids who choose this option also take a 0 because they can't follow directions. There's not even very many directions. I know. And yet most kids are stupid. So if you can follow directions, you're good. But Mr. Brovicast, the quiz isn't until Monday. That's after the homework comes due. No, my kids who can't follow directions, because it's not due until next Wednesday. I give you almost a week to put it off. Thanks. You're welcome. And so, quiz Monday. Homework doesn't come due until Wednesday. So you can choose that option if you want. Plus, responsible kids who read the directions, it does say if you do more than one option, you get extra B points. So if you do option 1 and option 2, that gets you an additional 3 B points. If you do options, all of them, that gets you an additional 6 B points. Now here's a bonus thing for you. Option 1, I create my own homework. I also create all of my own quizzes. Because I write both of them, sometimes I suffer from this thing called laziness. And here's how laziness works. That means I have to create a whole bunch of questions all about the same story. Sometimes I'll get lazy and use the questions from the homework on the quiz. So if you do the homework, you're going to have some of the questions for the quiz ahead of time. Plus, I like to reward responsible kids. So if you do the homework, you get to use the homework on the quiz. So you get to look up your own answers that you wrote down to help you out. Here's where it gets tricky. The best way to be able to do option 3 and do well in the quiz is by doing option 1, because you know all the questions. But then you've already done option 1. So then why do option 3? Because if you do 1 and 3, you get extra B points. So that becomes up to you. If your brain just physically melted and you can feel it getting squishy in the ear bits, just focus on option 1 and tune everything else out. And just go, everything else is hurting my brain. And then just go, option 1, answer question, okie dokie. And you just focus on that one and you're good. For those of you who feel stronger, you're going to venture down to 2. And for those of you who are like all superhero-y, you're going to go for 3. Those of you who are going to slowly build up to that one. And I wish you the best of luck. Holly? That's a book. I can't
No,
remember.
but it says, can we kick Jackson out? He's being kind of annoying.
Nah, he's fine. Until he annoys me. Gosh!
Okay, there's only homework 2 and homework 3. It's not sure there's only homework 1. So, like,
On yours?
Yeah.
I'm guessing you tapped on the wrong one? Or
Yeah,
you
the
didn't?
top says advanced.
What are you?
Fun game from there. Alright.
What
Did you
does
do
that? I'm confused.
Oh gosh. Wing?
On option 2, the last sentence in the thingy says the 4 stories, but then below that there's only 3.
But dang it. I tried to go back there and all change it. I had 4 stories on there. I took one. I had Fisherman on there. Then I removed Fisherman. I thought I found all my things where I said 4, but apparently I did not. So good job, Wing. You pointed out the fact I'm human. Nicely done.
He'd notice.
How is he?
Alright, so have we figured out the issue now?
Did you judge
Yeah,
me?
I had to do things, so I had to do it.
What is this magic thing you did with an iPad? So now, you're going to clear off the iPad. We're done with that technology, except for the kid who's figuring out how iPads work. It's magical.
Okay, that wasn't.
Imagine I have the hat on right now. That's way too far away for me to
Do you want
walk
me to
over
get
it.
it?
No.
I'll get it for you.
I'm going to just start throwing the hat over in this area so I can put it on when needed.
Do you want me to get it?
I want you to judge me, Mr. Brooke. Oh, trust me, I'm judging you all more than you think.
I know.
All right, so up to here. Now to the bell work. What I wanted to do was a practice round for option 2 because I saw some of your guys' brains melting. I could see the squishy bits coming out. So our bell work is a practice for option 2. So it's the easier version of it. So what you're going to do is I call it the alphabet phrases because essentially that's what option 2 is. What you're going to have to do for this is pick 5 letters of the alphabet that are in a row. So you pick any 5 letters, but they have to be ones in a row. In other words, A, B, C, D, E, or L, M, N, O, P, or S, T, U, V, W. Teamwork, W. So you pick 5 letters. You can't just pick random letters. B, R, D, A, F. It doesn't work. So you have to actually go through there and pick 5 letters in a row. Then, for each letter, you're coming up with a phrase that describes your book report book. So you're going to show me that you've read your book report book. Some of you have not even opened your book report book. That's going to make this frighteningly more challenging. For you, I give you a gift. Pick a different book. Because this is practice. You pick some other book you have read in your lifetime. Even if it involves you hopping on a pop, that's fine. Baby stepping for now. And so we're just trying to get you to the whole practicing how it works, writing them out. This is due tomorrow. Because normally we'd be doing it in class, but that hour and a half of work in 40 minutes, we're going to run out of time. I will let you work on this while we're reading about cats that are black, though. And just like, the hopping on pop, the cats. The one thing I will tell you with this, though, is if you're having trouble coming up with a word that starts with a letter, come up with a word that has the letter in the middle, and that's fine with me. I did Hunger Games because it's a work of art, because it's about kids killing kids. Genius. And so I went through there and did like, before her sister was taken, Katniss volunteered, then Crazy Mutations tried to kill her. So I went through and did those five. For letter F, if I was trying to think of something and I could not think of anything like, you could do, finally, at the end of the book, they both eat berries. That could very well work for the F. Or I could do, Effie is a girl with crazy hair that picks out, what's the sister's name? Sister's name. She pulls the sister's name out because then Katniss volunteers. If you've never seen this story, that's awful because kids die. And so in there, the sister, I almost had it. And so Effie, her name begins with E-F-F. So even though it begins with an E, you can still choose it because it has an F in there. So you just show the fact that you have an F somewhere in the word. These do not have to be in plot order. Your first one could be, and then they all die horribly and the bomb goes off. And then letter B could be, before the bomb, they're all running around high-fiving, and that's fine. And so as long as you go through, just show the connection. My goal with this is showing that you can think, you can be creative, and you demonstrate you read a thing. That's what, well, and you can follow directions. So those are the 4 things I'm looking for. Harry.
It says you have to have 6 to 10 words in it, and C, D, and E each have 11.
That's why I don't teach math. So counting. All I really worry about is the 6 part of it, because I have some kids like B, boy, C, cat, D, like. And so if you feel the need to go a little over, because I use little ones like in, I don't count that. In, I don't count that one. At, I don't count that one. And so there are little words like that, that's fine with me.
What about the?
Depends if I need to count it or not. It's all about me being right, so focus on that. Okay. Now that you've written a date and title at the top, you've picked your letters, and we'll go from there. It's time to read about kitties.
And he goes, yay!
And if you did not hear from my 3rd period, our story does have a happy ending. I would not make you read a story that ends depressingly. I figure it's depressing enough having you leave my class knowing you're not going to see me again for 23 hours. The last thing I need to do is give you a story that's depressing on top of that. All right. Oh, yesterday we got to, who's our main character?
The cat.
Do we know his name? Because what point of view is it being told in? First person, just the I. Where is he telling our story from? Because what's going to happen to him tomorrow? He does a flashback and tells us about his childhood, because how was he as a child? And what did he love as a child? Done. And then he gets his favorite animal, which is? Done. That's where the cat comes in. And then, what's the cat's name? What does he do to the cat first? You want to go get the cough drops again? Go get the cough drops again from there.
I didn't even notice. Get like 5. Maybe 10.
So then after we have the I issue, what thing? Because he feels bad, and because of his guilt, what does he do? There you go. That's the
cat without the eye.
Using the noose, and he throws it over in the whole hanging thing from there. The same night that the hanging happens, what occurs?
His house gets on fire.
And someone tries to wake him up. And how do they try to wake him up?
Throwing
the cat through the window. Apparently it worked. He woke up and didn't die. So like, oh, thank God for that cat on a string. And then he has that explanation for it. And then, he feels bad now that he's moved on. And he decides that to make himself feel better, what's he going to get?
a new cat.
A new cat. And what makes this new cat different? And what makes this cat the same? There you go. And so I came up with cat with splotch and the one eye thing going on.
A hole in the.
Technically, I put a pirate eye patch on it. You just can't see it very well.
I can see
But
it.
there's a little pirate eye patch. And I realized black pirate eye patch on black cat didn't show up as well, but it's all right. So that's where we got. So we're on the back side. First column, going down towards the bottom. Oh, and how does he feel about new cat?
He wants to kill it.
Apparently he was like, yay, new kitty, new kitty. I hate your kitty. I went straight to like going to, I want to kill kitty because there's a chance this man might have issues. Just a smidgen.
I know what the story's about.
He's got problems, period. What?
I know what the story's about.
It's about cats.
It's about you.
It's about I.
That's why we went to jail, isn't it?
Don't worry.
Reenacted and
Things are about to get worse.
How many cats have you killed in your life?
My wife had called my attention more than once to the shape of the mark of white hair, and which was the only visible difference between the strange beast and the one I had destroyed. The reader will remember that this mark, although large, had been originally quite indefinite, but by slow degrees nearly unnoticeable, in which for a long time my brain struggled to reject as simply imagination, its outline had taken on a more definite shape. It was now the depiction of an object that I shudder to name. And for this, above all, I loathed, dreaded. I would have rid myself of the monster had I dared. It was now, I say, the image of a hideous, of a ghastly thing, of the gallows. I, O mournful and terrible engine of horror and crime, of agony and death. So the blob is no longer a blob on the cat's chest. It is now slowly morphed and changed shape over the weeks that he's had it. It looks like a gallows. You guys know what a gallows is?
No.
For the purposes of this, yes. Oh my
That's
gosh.
what a gallows is. So apparently the kitty's shape now looks like that as it goes along. So it went from having a blob to now. Why would this shape bother him?
Because
And so all of a sudden it's coming back to haunt him.
You forgot.
Which I know on this one. He has his eye back. Yeah. I forgot on this one to take the eyeball out again. I'm not the same as the reader. I like cats with 2 eyes. Oh, and now the fun stuff. And now, it wasn't fun before.
Wasn't fun?
And now was I indeed miserable beyond mere humanity would allow. Alas, neither by day nor by night knew I the blessing of sleep anymore. During the former, the creature left me no moment alone, And in the latter, I started hourly from dreams of unutterable fear to find the hot breath of the thing upon my face, and its vast weight a living nightmare that I had no power to shake off, resting eternally upon my heart. So you properly address his crazy. He's really upset because this cat is doing an awful thing. What is the cat doing?
Annoying
them.
Not playing with him, but close. It's cuddling with him. And so whenever he goes to sleep, the cat lays on him and cuddles with him. And he's like, "You horrible creature!" Because he feels like it just would sit there and like lay on him, and then it would do this thing called breathing. And he was like, "I know." And he was like, "How dare you kick?" He might have issues, but it's okay. It's about to get worse. Beneath the pressure of torments such as these, torments such as a cat cuddling with him, the frail remains of the good that was within me gave way. Evil thoughts became my only comforts. The darkest and most evil of thoughts. The moodiness of my usual attitude increased in my hatred of all living things and of all mankind. And my uncomplaining wife was the most usual and the most patient of sufferers of these outbursts. So how is his wife?
Not good. Patient.
Is she good or bad?
She's good as person.
Yeah, she's putting up. He's becoming more and more awful and evil, and he's putting up with him. And she's like, "It's okay, honey. It's okay to be crazy." So she's very forgiving and nice because she's a loving person, like me. One day, she accompanied me upon some household errand into the basement of the old building which our poverty forced us to live in. The cat followed me down the steep stairs, and nearly tripping me, infuriated me into madness, lifting a nearby axe. Forgetting in my wrath the childish dread which had so far stopped me, I aimed a blow at the animal, which of course would have proved instantly fatal had it gone as I wished. But this blow was stopped by the hand of my wife. Aggravated by the interference into a blinding rage, I withdrew my arm from her grasp and buried the axe in her brain. She fell dead upon the spot without even a groan. Oopsie.
I said that so clearly. Oh my God.
This hideous murder accomplished, I set about the task of concealing the body, as you do. I knew that I could not remove it from the house, either by day or by night, without the risk of being seen by the neighbors. Many ideas entered my mind. At one period, I thought of cutting the corpse into tiny pieces and destroying them by fire. At another, I resolved to dig a grave for it in the floor of the basement. Again, I thought about tossing it in the well in the backyard. I even considered packing it in a box as if it were a present and getting the postman to take it away from the house. That's my favorite. Finally, I hit upon what I considered a far better method than either of these. I determined to wall it up in the cellar, as the monks of the Middle Ages are thought to have walled up their victims. For a purpose such as this, the basement was well tailored. Its walls were loosely constructed and had lately been plastered throughout with a rough plaster which the constant dampness of the basement had prevented from hardening. Moreover, in one of the walls was a hollow area caused by a false chimney or fireplace. Hiccup. They had been filled up and made to resemble the rest of the basement. I made no doubt that I could readily remove the bricks in this part, insert her corpse, and wall the whole up as before, so that no eye could detect anything suspicious.
Mr. Brovicast, that was my favorite part.
And in this calculation, hang on, real quick, he made another poor choice. What poor choice does he make this time?
Killing his wife.
And what's his reasoning for it?
He hated
He
him.
tried the way.
Because he tries to kill the cat. He's like, "I'm going to end you!" And then she grabbed a hand. He like, "Rah!" And then turned around like, "Thunk!" And now he has the issue of having to dispose of body, as you do. And so now he's getting a chance to go through and...
Everybody's had that problem.
and so now he has to try and get rid of it, and he's creative. So how is he going to get rid of it?
Put it in the wall.
By putting it in the wall. He figures that's the best way to hide it.
Why are you calling it it?
Is he gonna?
I saw that like it happened in front of me.
Yeah.
I'm like
I'm a
terrified.
good reader.
That's Olivia.
You're
And in this calculation, I was not wrong. With a crowbar, I easily dislodged the bricks, and, having carefully placed the body against the inner wall, I propped it in that position, while, with little trouble, I relaid the bricks and wall as it had originally stood. Having bought mortar, sand, and hair, I prepared a new plaster, which could not be distinguished from the old, and with this I very carefully went over my fresh brickwork. When I had finished, I felt sure that it was perfect. The wall did not have the slightest appearance of having been broken. The rubbish on the floor was picked up with care. I looked around triumphantly and said to myself, "Here at least then my work has not been in vain." He's a proud man. My next step was to look for the beast which had been the cause of so much misery, for I had at length firmly resolved to put it to death. Had I been able to meet with it at the moment, there could have been no doubt of its fate. But it appeared that the crafty animal had been alarmed at the violence of my previous anger, and had decided to hide because of my present mood. It's impossible to describe the deep and blissful sense of relief which the absence of the detested creature created in me. It did not come out again that night, and thus, for one night at least, since its introduction into the house, I soundly and calmly slept. Yes, I slept, even with the burden of murder upon my soul. By the way, this all happened in one evening. The whole axe, bury, trying to find. So that was all one evening. He was a busy little bee. And took care of all that, and then got rid of her, and then finally had a good night's sleep. So anytime you're having trouble sleeping, now you know what to do.
So, I think the cat's goal was to make him lose everything. Like first, his house burned down, and then he killed his wife, and then
the second and the third day passed, and still my tormentor came not. Once again, I breathed as a free man. The monster, in terror, had fled the house forever. I should behold it no more. My happiness was supreme. The guilt of my dark deed disturbed me very little. Some investigation into my wife's disappearance had been made, but these have been readily answered. Even a search for her had occurred, but of course, nothing was to be discovered. I looked upon my future freedom as entirely secure. By the way, we know that's not true because of this thing called foreshadowing. Because what do we know?
He's dead.
And what's going to happen to him tomorrow?
He's gonna die.
So foreshadowing. Upon the fourth day of the assassination, the police came very unexpectedly into the house, and again made a thorough investigation of the house. I felt safe, however, in knowing that they would never discover my place of concealment. The officers asked me to accompany them in their search. They left no nook or corner unexplored. At length, for the third or fourth time, they descended into the basement. I did not quiver a muscle. My heart beat as calmly as that of one who sleeps in innocence. I walked the basement from end to end. I folded my arms upon my chest and roamed easily to and fro. The police were thoroughly satisfied and prepared to leave. The excitement in my heart was too strong to be restrained. I burned to say but one word so that I could secretly gloat and yet also convince them of my guiltlessness. You guys know what gloat means?
Yeah.
A little bragging, a little showing off, being a little cocky. Gentlemen, I said at last, as the cops climbed the steps, I'm happy to have dispelled your suspicions. I wish you all good health. By the by, gentlemen, this is a very well-constructed house. In the rabid desire to say something easily, I scarcely knew what I uttered at all. I may say an excellently constructed house. These walls... Are you going already, gentlemen? These walls are solidly put together. And here, through the mere act of daring, I knocked heavily with a cane which I held in my hand upon that very portion of the brickwork behind which stood the corpse of my wife. But may God shield and deliver me from the fangs of the evil beast. No sooner had the echoes of my blows sunk into silence than I was answered by a voice from within the tomb by a cry, at first muffled and broken, like the sobbing of a child, and then quickly swelling into one long, loud, continuous scream, utterly abnormal and inhuman, a howl, a wailing shriek, half of horror, half of triumph, such as might have arisen only out of a nightmare, conjointly from the throats of the cursed in their agony, and of the demons that exult in their eternal torture. As to my own thoughts, it is silly to speak of them. Swooning, I staggered to the opposite wall. For one instant, the policeman stood upon the stairs for a moment. The policemen upon the stairs remained motionless, frozen by their terror and awe. In the next, a dozen strong arms were tearing at the wall. It fell quickly. The corpse, already greatly decayed and clotted with gore, stood erect before the eyes of the crowd. Upon the corpse's head, with its gaping red mouth and solitary eye of fire, sat the hideous beast whose axe had seduced me into murder, and whose powerful voice will send me to the hangman. I had walled the monster up within the tomb.
How's that a happy ending?
Wait, I'm so confused. What?
So, he is all sassy. And so the policemen are on their way out. But to prove to them how strong the house is, what does he do?
Don't do it again.
So he goes and bangs on. He's like, bangy, bangy, bangy. He's like, come on, dude, you can't leave. Look how good this house is. This house is awesome. When he knocks on it, what happens? Now, he knows what's on the other side of the wall. And what does he know is on the other side of the wall?
His wife.
His dead wife. He's like, knock, knock, knock. He's like, he's like, because what does he think is making the sound?
His dead wife.
And he's like, she'd be dead. And all of a sudden, the policemen come running down there, tear down the wall, and they do find his wife, but they also find
The cat.
the cat sitting on top of his wife's head. And that's who did the screaming. So because of that, he did not realize it, but apparently at some point, brick, cat jumps in, brick, and you keep going, and all of a sudden you build the whole thing up. You're like, I got rid of the cat. And the cat's in there and we're all good. So that's who eventually sends him to jail and gets him killed is
The cat. I would say guilty on.
Remember at the very beginning when he said all it was a normal thing of events, but to me it seems spooky and creepy? Technically, it was a normal course of events. Man stabs cat, man hangs cat, man gets new cat, man kills wife with axe, happens to everybody. Man puts wife in wall, cat miserably makes noise, and so it's one of those things where taken by themselves, completely normal. But all together,
You went to jail?
well, as completely normal as that could be. But it doesn't have to be anything like supernatural. It's just things that happen. By the way, if we'd like to turn your creepy dial up just a little bit.
Yeah, really. Thanks.
How long had it been between killing and him knocking on the wall?
1 day.
4 days.
Like 4 or 5 days. How long had the cat been in there?
4.
4 or 5 days.
Guess what cat can't survive without?
No, stop, no.
When he says he sees the cat,
No.
he talks about the fact the cat's red mouth.
Stop.
So, like I said, we're just, that's where we just put it out there for those of you who don't have an imagination. Just let that flow past you. Just go, I don't get it. And
Oh,
that's
she ate the white.
I've already seen it clearly like a
The
picture.
cat ate the wife's brain.
started eating the white.
And there's your second part of it, so him freaking out and the policeman. I tried to do my best Brovicast for you on that one. So in the story, with our foreshadowing, what foreshadowing do we have throughout the whole thing? If you remember, I can point some out that takes out the fun if I do it. But things that were in there that you can remember that foreshadowed the ending now that things make more sense to you? Amira?
Like he's like, oh, the cat's evil, and now like, because the cat kind of sent him to jail, but also like he killed a person, so it's kind of like
Justified in something. If you think that's wrong. So sure, the fact that he keeps saying the cat is evil, because he is telling this from jail after having seen all of it occur. Geeks?
So on the other side at the beginning, when he starts drinking alcohol, it says, "At length I've been attacked with my personal violence."
Yeah, and so the fact that you talk about the attacking with the personal violence, and then at the very end of it we have the most definite personal violence. And then he drops the hints of at the very beginning he tells us what's going to happen to him the next day. So you start the story with foreshadowing where he's like, I'm going to die tomorrow. I'm a really nice person and I love cats. And you're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. And as it goes through there, he dropped that little nugget and then like lets it sit there and hang on you and stuff as it goes through.
Hang on you.
And then you have the fact that, by the way, what does he name the cat? Pluto.
God of death.
The god of death. Which at the time you think, oh, because it's a black cat. But now you realize naming it Pluto was a bit of foreshadowing. Because why would that be foreshadowing in the story?
It literally dies.
And then also,
The wife died.
and then the wife dies, and then technically the cat possibly comes back to life, which can only happen if you are Pluto. And then he dies at the end, so being that. And then also, when he talked about the black cat and his wife first sees the black cat, what is it his wife kind of assumes about black cats? He said, oh, so I can find the thing where he says,
They're witches.
there you go. Which at the time, like, oh, ha, black cats are witches. Now when we get to the end, it takes on a much deeper meaning. Like, oh, because if the black cat had been a witch, it came back to life, and the changing of the little white spot and the stuff like that, and the whole thing. So the idea of these little hints that he's dropping in throughout the whole thing helps even more. Next week, we get to another story that is all foreshadowing. Because much like my regular kid story they did today, it's going to stop in the middle of a conversation. And the only way to figure it out is by using foreshadowing. But also next week we get to introduce irony into our foreshadowing. And all of these different levels of learning are going to be happening. It's going to be wonderful.
Learning levels.
Mika?
Also, foreshadowing is that spot on the cat because it turns into
The gallows thing?
Yeah, and then he ends up
Getting hung. Nicely done again. Foreshadowing!
Are you proud